Hello, my name is Sandy Benhart, and I'm one of the outreach coordinators at the Teachers Retirement System. What we're going to talk about today is referred to as TRS Express for Tier 2 members. So this is a high-level discussion of the types of things that you could be thinking about at any point in your career to give yourself the best possible retirement. We'll begin by talking about some TRS basics. What is a pension compared to other types of retirement plans? And how do you calculate your pension benefit with TRS? And then there are some additional components that you may not even be aware of. There is the TRS Supplemental Savings Plan, the SSP. That's a defined contribution plan. There are disability and death benefits available. And then we will talk about the retirement process itself in terms of what you should be doing all along the way to get yourself ready for retirement. And of course, once you retire, you may want to do some post-retirement work. So we'll talk about what those limits would be. What does it mean to be a Tier 2 member? Well, there's a very cut and dry delineation here. There are 13 pension systems in Illinois. And if you contributed to any of them 1 day or more before January 1st of 2011, you are in Tier 1. If your first day of contribution was after January 1st of 2011, you would be in Tier 2. What we will be talking about here is Tier 2. So here's what a pension plan is. All TRS members, and this is both Tier 1 and Tier 2, contribute 9% of gross earnings to TRS. That money is invested in the TRS Trust Fund, and it is used to pay for your retirement, potentially disability benefits, and death benefits. The benefit for a defined benefit program is determined by a formula that's in the Illinois Pension Code. It's a simple math problem. I'll show you the components to that, and that would be your starting pension. And then once you retire and begin collecting a pension, those benefits are paid for as long as you live, all the way through the month of your death. Then added to that could be an optional defined contribution plan. The program that TRS offers is called the Supplemental Savings Plan, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So when can you retire? Your full retirement age is going to be the age of 67 with at least 10 years of service credit. You can retire earlier than that, though. You can retire as early as the age of 62. But anything under the age of 67 is going to be considered early retirement, and that will come with a reduction in your pension. The reduction is 6% for each year that you're under 67. So we would calculate your pension and reduce it. Actually, the reduction is calculated to the day, but for each full year that you're under 67, it would be a reduction of 6%. So the math problem I mentioned is this. We're going to take your service credit times a formula factor. That'll give you a percentage. Take that percentage times your final average salary, and that would be your starting annual pension benefit. The part of the equation that has the most pieces to it is service credit. You can earn service credit in 4 different ways. Probably most of your service credit is going to come from TRS covered work. What that means is your contract is probably at least 180 days. It might be 185, 210 days, 260 days. But once you reach 170 days worked, you will achieve a full year of service credit, and that is the most you can get. Our fiscal year runs July 1st of one year through June 30th of the next year. So once you begin working, you accumulate credit every day until you get to 170, and that will be the maximum of 1 year of service credit. But you don't need to have a full year in order to get service credit. So maybe you're someone that works part-time, you don't work every day, or you're a substitute teacher, or maybe you started mid-year, graduated from college in December and started in January, and there wasn't a full year left to work. In that case, we take whatever number of days you worked, divide it by 170, and you would get a partial year of service credit. So most of your service credit will be working in a TRS covered position up to 1 year in each year. There is some free service credit available, and that would be unused uncompensated sick days. Every year, you begin the year and get some allotment of sick days from your district. If you don't use them all, you carry the extras over to the next year, and then you get a new allotment for that year. You can keep piling up those unused sick days, and when you're ready to retire, we will convert that to service credit as though you worked. So what would happen is, at the time of retirement, if you had, for example, 85 unused sick days, that would be an extra half a year of service credit. And you don't pay anything for the sick days. They're just part of your contract. So that's why I say it's actually free service credit. For unused sick days, every day is going to count until you reach the maximum. The greatest amount of service credit that you can get from unused sick days is 2 years. That would be 2 times 170 or 340 sick days. So that is the most you can use to convert to service credit. Now, if you used to work in a different district than the one that you work in right now, and you had leftover sick days there, you should be able to log into your TRS account, and those unused sick days should be there. If they're not, you would call TRS. We will send you a form called a former employee sick leave certification, and you would send that to your former employer and ask them to report those days. Your sick days from your current district are not going to show up on your account yet. Those will not be reported to us until you either resign from the district or retire. But sick days from a former employer should be showing up there. And you'll want to follow up on that as soon as possible, because sometimes over the years, things can happen to those records. And in order to get them to us, your district needs to be able to verify it. So you want that free service credit. And if it's not out there, give us a call. We'll send you the form, and you can reach out to that district and have them report those days. Now, there is some service credit that you could purchase. It's called optional service, and it falls into a few categories. The first one here is out-of-state teaching. So if you were working in a public school system in another state, or actually an American school overseas, you were paying into that retirement system. So TRS would be looking for that 9% that we would have invested for you to count that service in Illinois. There's a process that you would go through to cancel out your out-of-state teaching in another state and convert it to TRS service. You can buy a maximum of 10 years. You need to be working in Illinois for at least 5 years before you can reach out and begin this process. But you could add service credit from another state if you wanted to buy that into Illinois. A leave of absence or reduction in force would allow you to buy up to 3 years of service. So a leave of absence means that you are on unpaid leave. If you're using sick days, you're getting paid and you're getting service credit. But if you were on an unpaid leave, you could look to restore that service credit. Again, there's a form for that. You would send it to the district. They would verify that it was a board certified leave, and you could pay to have that service included. Reduction in force means you lost your job because it was eliminated and you were unable to find TRS work the next year. Same process. You would get a form from us, send it to the district that you got laid off from, and you would have an opportunity to purchase that time. Military service is the only type of service not related to education that you could purchase. So this would be up to 2 years of service credit for serving in the military. And all we need for that is for you to take a picture of your DD-214, upload it to your TRS account, and we will calculate how much service you could purchase and what the cost would be. Previously refunded TRS service means that you worked in TRS and left work. Either you thought you weren't coming back, maybe you moved, something like that. So you took the money out and now you're back and you would like to restore that service credit. In order to find out the cost for that, you would simply call us. We have all that information because we refunded it to you. And then we would send that to you and let you know how much it would cost to repay it. There's something different about just this category. If you previously refunded TRS service, you either need to purchase all of it or none of it. You cannot buy just some of it back. And then Illinois private school is the only one that has a deadline on it right now. You don't need to pay for it by June 30th of 2028, but you need to get it verified by then. This means that you taught in a private school. It needs to be Illinois private school, kindergarten through grade 12, and you could purchase up to 2 years of that service credit. So for optional service, there are different amounts you can purchase. The way that we calculate the cost to buy it is different. You could pay for it with a check, or you could pay for it by rolling money over from something like a 403B or the TRS Supplemental Savings Plan. There are a lot of options here. For all of them except the refunded service, you could buy all of it. Once we verify it, you could purchase all of it. You could determine it's too expensive, you don't want to buy any of it, or you could purchase just some of it. Just the refunded service is all or nothing, but all the other categories, you can buy all, none, or some. So this offers some really good options to you to increase your service credit with TRS. Reciprocal service is also something that you would not pay for. It means that you worked in one of the other 12 pension systems in Illinois. The most common ones we see would be IMRF, which is paraprofessionals, state universities, state employees, or Chicago. But if you worked in any of those other pension systems in Illinois, what would happen is this. You need to have at least 1 year of service credit that is non-concurrent. So what that means is if you're working in TRS during the day and you teach at a community college in the evening, that would pay into the state university retirement system. That is all concurrent. You're doing it all in the same year. And that rule about not getting more credit in a year than just 1 year is going to apply here as well. So to count reciprocal service, it needs to be non-concurrent. But if you have at least 1 year of non-concurrent service, what would happen is you leave that service credit right where it is in the other system, but we add it together with TRS to get a total service credit amount. So if you add 2 years in IMRF as a teacher's aide, and then 20 years in TRS as an educator, altogether that would be 22 years of service credit. And then when you retire, you would get one check for the 2 years in IMRF and a separate check for the 20 years in TRS. So you add it together to get a total amount of service credit. Now, there is one exception to that 1 year of service credit, and that is that if you were specifically in the role of a teacher's aide paying into IMRF, and that was immediately followed by teaching service in TRS, you can use less than a year of IMRF. But for all the others, it needs to be at least a full year, and it does need to be non-concurrent service. So the 4 ways to get service credit: working in a TRS-covered position, saving up unused sick days, possibly purchasing optional service or using reciprocal service. All those things are added together to get one bottom line amount of service credit. And it doesn't really matter to us how much is in each category. We just add it all up together. Now, the formula factor is the second component, and it's much simpler. It is just one thing, 2.2%. What this means is that you are going to get 2.2% of your final average salary for every year of service credit. And there's nothing you can do to make 2.2% larger or smaller. That's just what is in the pension code. So you'll get 2.2% of your final average salary. And the way we calculate that is to take the average of your 8 highest consecutive salaries out of the last 10 years of service. That's how we calculate your final average salary. Now, there is a salary cap on this. Next year, it's going to be $127,283. It does go up every year. So if a fiscal year is going to be part of your final average salary, that salary cap is going to indicate the highest amount that we will be using to take the 8 highest years. So the average of the 8 highest consecutive salaries out of your last 10 years of work. A lot of times salary includes more than what you're thinking about. You think about what your contract pay is, but it also is going to count any of your extra duty stipends. So if you're a coach, yearbook, lunch duty, you sub for someone during your planning period, all those things you get paid for are going to be reported as part of your earnings by the district. And then in addition to that, the entire 9% contribution to TRS is also part of your earnings. And that is true even if you work in a district that pays some or all of the 9% for you. It doesn't matter who pays it, it is all included. So putting this all together might look something like this. This is going to be an unreduced example, meaning this person is retiring at the age of 67, full retirement age, 30 years of service, and a final average salary of $85,000. So we just do the math. 30 times 2.2% means that they'll get 66% of the $85,000, and the starting pension is $56,100 a year, or $46.75 a month. What if you wanted to retire early, though? In this case, the earliest possible age is the age of 62. So we'll say this person is retiring on their 62nd birthday. Same information, 30 years times 2.2% times 85,000, and you get that 56,100 a year. But at that point, the age reduction is applied. This is 5 years younger than full retirement age, times 6% for each year would be a 30% reduction. And you're down to $39,270 a year. That would be $3,272 a month. So the usual questions people have when thinking about this is, if I retire with a reduced pension, is it permanently reduced, or will it become unreduced when I reach the age of 67? And the answer to that is, once you retire with a reduced pension, it is a permanent reduction. But what if you stop working sometime before you're 67 and don't collect until you're 67? To TRS, you are retired when we start paying you. So if you decide to defer collecting your pension until the age of 67, then it would not be reduced. We would consider 67 to be your retirement age if you waited to collect until then. So how do you maximize your pension? Well, the math would say 34 years. The most you can get is 75% of your final average salary. That's the most you can get for your pension. 34 years of service times 2.2% would be 74.8%. We round that to 75 of your final average salary, and that is the most that you can get. What if you have gotten to 34 years and you still want to work or are not old enough to retire, so you're waiting a while, you could keep working. And if you're still getting raises, then your final average salary is going to be higher. So it'll be 75% of a bigger number. But that 75% is the maximum that you can get. It helps a lot instead of using a generic 30 years, $85,000. It helps a lot to look at your own specific numbers. So we can do a benefit estimate for you. We need to know about when you want to retire. A couple ages. Are you going to work all the way till 62 or 67? So how many years do you want to work? And what age do you want to retire? We need to know how much your salary is for the current year and a guess as to what you would be making in future years. We do know all of your years leading up to the current year, but we do not know what you're making right now and what kind of raises you can expect. We also need to know how many sick leave days you have from your current district because those will not have been reported to us yet. And then we need information about your district retirement incentives. So if you are approaching retirement, you may work in a district that offers you something extra if you give them notice of your retirement date a few years ahead of time. An example could be that a district could say, if you give us 3 years notice of your retirement, we will give you larger increases. There are nearly 1,000 school districts in Illinois. All of them have different plans. Some don't have any incentives. So you would need to tell us what this is so that we can include that in an estimate. And then if you have service in a reciprocal system, we need to know that as well because we will reach out to that system, verify the service credit, and we can include it in the estimate for you. Now, you can do an estimate yourself as well. If you go on your TRS account, you can do an estimate yourself. But if you have reciprocal service, you're not going to be able to include that. You can only do the TRS portion yourself on your TRS account. So then you would call us to include the reciprocal service. Everything that we have talked to up to this point has been regarding your TRS pension, so that required 9% contribution to TRS, which is used to fund your benefits, most of it towards your retirement. But there is a voluntary option to supplement your pension. So we have Voya as a partner to do that program, and today we have Tanya Coleman presenting that information.
Thank you. In 2018, the Illinois General Assembly passed law to amend your pension code to include an optional retirement benefit for all TRS members, known as the TRS Supplemental Savings Plan. Now, the intent is to provide one uniform, high-quality, low-cost plan for all TRS members. TRS has chosen Voya to be the record keeper of this plan. Now, the TRS Supplemental Savings Plan, which I will refer to as the SSP, is a 457B deferred contribution plan that complements your TRS pension. Your participation in the 457B plan is optional. So a 457B plan is an employer-sponsored, tax-favored retirement savings account. You decide how much you want to contribute up to the maximum annual limits of $23,500 set by the IRS for 2025. The minimum contribution is $30 per pay or 1% per pay, and your contributions are automatically deducted from your paycheck. Now, the TRS-SSP has several options to help you reach your retirement goals: a traditional 457B option and or a Roth 457B option. Now, you can choose the traditional 457B option and take advantage of the tax deferral upfront. So no income taxes are withheld on your contributions, which lowers your current taxable earnings. So your contributions and any earnings accumulated are tax deferred. Now, you will pay income tax on your account withdrawals in the future, and that's typically in retirement. Now, you can also choose a Roth 457B option, which takes income tax out of your pay before contributions are applied to the 457B account. So income taxes are withheld from your contributions before they're invested into the account, and your contributions are not tax deductible. So the advantage is in the future, when you're eligible for distribution from the plan, you'll be able to withdraw the money, including any earnings, tax-free, but you must meet the IRS rules. So the qualifying IRS rules require contributions to be held in the account at least 5 years before the date of distribution, and you must be 59 and a half, and that's assuming you've separated from service from your employer, disability, or death. Now, you can choose to contribute to a combination of both. So a portion of your contribution on a pre-tax basis, your traditional, and a portion on an after-tax basis, your Roth. Now, one of the most commonly asked questions is, what is the big difference between the TRS 457B and a 403B? Well, the TRS 457B, in order to participate, you must be a TRS member. And for the 403B, eligibility may depend upon what your district stipulates. For the TRS 457B, there is no 10% IRS penalty. So what that means is, if you no longer are with TRS, you are able to withdraw the money that you've put into the account without the 10% penalty before age 59 and a half. For 403B, there is a 10% penalty. Even if you're separated from service, if you're under 59 and a half, the IRS will penalize you 10% if money is taken out. The TRS 457B has a special 3-year catch-up, and the 403B has a 15-year special catch-up. Now, the TRS 457B has unforeseen emergency withdrawal. It does not have loan provisions. The 403B has hardship and loan provisions. Now, once you are invested in the account, you have a couple of ways to invest your money. You have the do-it-myself option, which allows you to select from various funds to build a unique portfolio for your retirement needs. You can pick funds to create a strategy that you think will fit best your time horizon and risk tolerance, and you'll manage that portfolio of funds over time. Now, there are tools and resources available online to help you manage that portfolio, and you're welcome to reach out to your local retirement education specialist for guidance. Or you can leave the investing decisions up to the professionals and take a more hands-off approach, having it done for you with target date fund options. Now, these one-stop shop funds are a pre-diversified mix of investments managed by professional fund managers who automatically adjust the risk and return exposure of the fund as you get closer to retirement. Now, you can choose to invest in a combination of both options available. So you have the ability also to change your investment selections daily. Now, we don't recommend you change the funds frequently. Now, to participate in the TRS-SSP, you must be an active TRS member, with the exception of hourly and extra duty personnel. So how can you enroll? Step 1, go to TRSILSSP.voya.com, select Register Now, and enroll. You'll answer questions that will assist you in setting your retirement goals. And then next, you'll choose how much you want to save from your paycheck, selecting pre or post-tax options or both. And then step 2, select your investments. Do it for me, do it myself, or a combination of the two. And then step 3, you'll choose your beneficiaries. Now, a beneficiary would receive your plan assets in the event of your death. You can make updates anytime online or by phone. Now, after you complete these steps, you will confirm your choices and then submit. Now, once submit, you'll receive a welcome email. Now, all TRS members will receive a PIN, personal identification number, in a plain security envelope in the mail. Now, this does not mean that you're enrolled into the plan. It is an additional security feature to protect your information. Now, this PIN is used to make any changes online or by phone once you're enrolled. Thank you.
Some members are not aware that disability and benefits are payable from TRS as part of the 9% that you're already paying. So this is not a separate insurance policy. You may have something with the district, but that is not, that would be in addition to this. This is part of the program that we have. So really what we want is for you to be aware that this is out there. What it means is that you have two physicians that say that you are unable to do your job for physical or mental health reasons, and you do need to have seen them both within 90 days of the last day that you worked. You do need to use up all of your sick days from your current district. But if you are starting to go through those sick days and you think you're not going to be able to come back to work, you would contact TRS and we can help you begin the process of the paperwork. If you're approved for disability, the benefit would be 40% of your contract rate, and that would be a direct deposit each month on the first of each month for the amount of time that you're on temporary disability. One thing that is helpful, if there's anything helpful about being on disability, is that you do continue to earn service credit while you're on disability. So even though you're not able to work and you're not getting as much money as when you were working, you are still earning service credit while you're on temporary disability. The other benefit that is part of the 9% is death benefits. And the 9% is divided into two different buckets. 1% of it is going to pay survivor benefits, and the other 8% is invested to pay for your own personal retirement. So this is what the top of the beneficiary form for TRS would look like. You need to print this off your TRS account or give us a call and we can get it to you, but there are not blank forms sitting around anywhere. You have to print it off your account. And when you do that, everything in section 1, that personal information, will already be on the form. So the first thing you do is check that and be sure it's okay. And if something has changed, you need to correct that. Then section 2, marital status, whichever of those applies, you would check that box. If you're married, put your spouse's name at the end there. The automatic designation, section 3, is one of two ways to complete the form. If you choose this, section 1 and section 2 are going to be filled out. You would check that box in section 3, sign and date the form at the bottom, and not write any other names on the form. So why would you do that? Well, the survivor benefits for TRS have everything to do with whether or not you have dependents. Always a one-time lump sum is payable, but if you have dependents, they can get a monthly benefit when you pass away. So a dependent would be defined as a spouse of 1 or more years. They are always going to be dependent, even if they have their own job, career. They are always a dependent for this person, for this purpose. So a spouse is a dependent. Also, your biological or adopted children up to the age of 18 or to the age of 22 if they are full-time unmarried college students, and potentially an adult disabled child also would be a dependent. So dependents can get a monthly benefit. Sometimes people have multiple dependents in their household. So maybe you're married and you have 3 children and everybody is dependent. If you check that automatic designation and you pass away, someone will let us know and we will see who is dependent at that point in time and offer that monthly benefit to whoever is eligible. So the automatic designation, when you have multiple dependents, gives your family a way to work their way through transition so that you don't have to keep updating the form every year as your children age out, possibly don't go to college, something like that. So it gives you some flexibility to be sure that the monthly benefit is offered to whoever is dependent at that time. A lot of times, by the time people are getting ready to retire, the whole situation of who is and is not dependent is settled. So in my example, you're married and have 3 children. If you want to list names, you could replace that automatic designation form with a form including the names. And in that case, you would fill in your spouse only as your primary beneficiary. And then we'll say your children at this point are 25, 30, something like that. You could list them by names as alternate. They are no longer eligible for a monthly benefit, but your spouse is. So here's what would happen. If you pass away before your spouse, we will see them as the primary, and we will offer them that monthly benefit, which would be 67% of your pension. We would offer that to them, and that would be payable for the rest of their life. And then when they pass away, there's nothing left. But what if your spouse passed away before you? Now you don't have any dependents. We move to the alternates, and there are your 3 kids. So that one-time lump sum is payable to them. It would be no less than 1/6 of your highest salary. And what we would do is divide that exactly among the alternates and write them a check if they're listed here by name. If you had never changed it from automatic designation and your spouse passed away first, that exact same 1/6 of your highest salary is payable, but in this case, it's going to go to your estate, and it has to be settled through that. A lot of times people would rather just list the people they want as alternates, and then they can get a check directly. So a couple things to know. It doesn't need to be your children. If you list by name, it could be anyone that you want that to go to. And also, at the time you retire, not before retirement, but at the time you retire, if you do not have any dependents, we will refund your 1% survivor benefit to you. So that would be maybe you were never married, or you're divorced or widowed and you have children and they're grown up, so nobody is dependent. You could refund that 1% survivor benefit to yourself. The thing to keep in mind if you do that is that if you married at a later date, you cannot reestablish a survivor benefit so that a new spouse would be able to get that monthly benefit. Once you take the money out, it is gone. The beneficiary refund is a little bit simpler concept. This is the other 8% that is invested to pay for your own personal retirement. And what happens is it continues to grow all the way until you get your very last check from the district. And then once you begin collecting your pension, we start taking money out of your bucket every month as we pay you. That whole bucket of money, everything that you invested, is only going to last about 4 years into retirement. At that point, we will have paid you back everything you put in, and then we will pay you a monthly benefit out of the TRS Trust Fund for the rest of your life. But if you were to pass away any time between now and when you have recovered your own investment yourself in pension income, whatever is left in that bucket is going to go in a lump sum to whoever you put on the form. This is a separate benefit from the survivor benefit. If there's money left in your bucket, they don't need to pick between survivor benefit and the beneficiary refund. They would get both. But most people live well beyond the 4 years and have recovered this money themselves. So a lot of times this bucket of money is depleted, but the survivor benefits will remain out there unless you opted to refund them. So how do you prepare for retirement? This really could begin at any point in your career. A couple times I've mentioned your TRS account. It's really important to go out on your TRS account and review your earnings and your service credit. You want to be sure that what your district reported for your earnings is correct. You also want to be sure that they reported if you worked a whole year, you want to see that whole year reported. If you worked a partial year, you want to be sure that partial year was reported. So you want to look at that and be sure it's correct. If it is not, it's pretty easy to fix early on. You would contact the district and they would review it. And if necessary, they would send us something called an adjustment to earnings and it would be corrected. It becomes increasingly difficult to fix this if it's something that happened a long time ago. So you should look out on your TRS account every year once we let you know the district has reported earnings, and be sure everything has been reported correctly. You also want to look at who you have for beneficiaries. You may have a separate TRS supplemental savings plan, a 403B. You might have different beneficiaries on that than you want on TRS. So reporting changes in your life tier district is not going to change the beneficiaries with TRS. You want to look at who you have listed on your TRS account and be sure that represents who you would want to get those benefits. You also need to upload proof of birth. Really what this means is we need to verify that the date of birth we have on record for you is correct, because when you can retire is partially related to your age. So proof of birth could be a copy of your driver's license, birth certificate, or passport. You can simply take a picture of that, upload it to your account, and once it's done, that's out of the way. I mentioned that you can do updated benefit estimates on your TRS account. You can ask us to do them, but you can also do them yourself as often as you like. You are welcome to meet with a TRS counselor at any time. We have in-office appointments in both Springfield and Lisle, and then you could also do a video conference or a teleconference. For sure, once you get to the 12 to 18 month time frame before retirement, you should meet with a counselor, but we actually would recommend that you do this once or twice at least before that, just to be sure that we're all in agreement that you are headed in the direction that you think you are. We want to be sure that every possible optional service, your saving sick days, your reciprocal service, we want to be sure all of that is incorporated the way that you're thinking, so that you're going in the direction that you think. You can set up one of these appointments at any point in your career. If the upcoming year is the year that you plan to retire, if you're going to retire at the end of the 24-25 year, we have It's Time to Retire webinars. And what we do here is explain at the time that you need to be doing things. These are the things that you probably should have done already. If you didn't do those, you probably want to get on that. And then this is what you need to do starting right now in order to retire at the end of the year. If you are not retiring in that year, you don't need to join those webinars. You can join in the year that you do retire, but those are offered every year. And then we'll always tell you to check in with your financial planner. You're going to want to monitor any defined contribution plans that you have. Maybe you're married and you want to put this all together with a spouse. So you just want to be sure that you've got all the pieces together. Now, of course, once you retire, it's very possible your district will want you to sub or come back in some capacity and work in a TRS covered position. There are some rules about this. You can do that, but you need to follow these rules. The first thing is, according to TRS, you are not retired until we have paid you. So you need to receive your first pension check before you do anything in TRS. And then once you've received your first pension check, you can work 120 days or 600 hours per school year in a TRS covered position. And that limit is good to June of 2026. The state could extend it. The least it would ever be is 100 days and 500 hours. That's in the pension code. So there will be plenty of days that you can work in a TRS covered position once you're retired. Now, while there is a limit of days, there is no limit on earnings. So no matter how much the district agrees to pay you, that is going to be fine. It's no limit on earnings, just the days or hours. One other thing to keep in mind is if you have reciprocal service, meaning you're retiring reciprocal with IMRF and TRS, you would need to check separately with IMRF on their post-retirement rules. These rules are just TRS, but you need to follow the rules of all the systems that you're retiring from. Also, once you retire from TRS and start collecting a pension, you cannot work full-time in one of the other Illinois pension systems. So you can retire from TRS and collect a pension from us, but you cannot then work full-time in state universities, something like that. You can work part-time in the other systems, but not full-time. Outside of this, you can do anything at all that you want. So you could work in the private sector, you could work full-time, no limit on either earnings or money. You could work at a private school in Illinois. You could also work in a public school in another state that is not related to our pension system. So there are many opportunities to do post-retirement work, but certainly if you want to do that, you'll want to check and just be sure that it fits and you'll understand what limits, if any, apply. I've mentioned a few times here your starting pension, and that's because you are going to get raises in retirement. So there are two things that need to happen to get your first raise. You need to be at least 67 years old. You need to be retired for at least a full year. And then the next January 1st, after both of those are true, you will get your first raise. Your raise will be half CPI or 3%, not compounded, and you will get a raise every year. And your pension will be payable as long as you live. So this slide includes a lot of information that will show you what the resources are. I mentioned that you could set up an appointment or have us help you do a benefit estimate. You could do that by calling that toll-free number there. That's our member services team, 877-927-5877. And they can help you get a lot of those things started and answer questions for you. You also could send an email to the members@trsil.org email address, and a counselor will respond to that. There's a couple things to think about there. This would be the types of questions that are pretty simple, straightforward questions that you have. If your question is, I want to know when I can retire, or you have a list of 7 questions, that is not an email conversation. That would be calling the 877 number and setting up an appointment. But the email address is there if you just have a couple quick questions. Do be sure if you send us an email that you identify yourself. Sometimes people will send an email and it's not the email that we have on file for you, and we cannot figure out who we're talking to. So either include your member ID or the last 4 of your Social Security number so we know for sure who we're looking for. And then there are various other ways, social media, the TRS website, all kinds of ways you can get in touch with us. The last thing on here is the supplemental savings contact information. You can get a lot of things if you check that QR code that's at the top there. That will show you when our financial education specialists are holding webinars. And then there's also a map that if you go on the website, you can see which of the 3 Voya financial education specialists you should be working with. Those are divided by geography. And that time tap email, this link down here, is where you would be able to go online and set a 20-minute appointment, a virtual appointment with your financial education specialist. So they are a great resource for you to have your TRS benefit estimate and then show you how you can enhance your retirement as well as giving yourself options down the road. So I want to thank you for listening in here. We know that your job is very hard, very demanding, and you do things that we at TRS don't necessarily know how to do. We do not know how to teach in a classroom necessarily. We are not licensed to be a speech pathologist, but we do know how to help you calculate your pension and create those options for yourself. So rely on us for this information. We are always happy to help. Thank you.